So I don't know in United States, but here in Brazil, some evangelicals romanticize Israel. They love the nation. They have flags of Israel at home. So, but they often don't really understand Jewish faith or culture. So, if you could correct one common theological misunderstanding Christians have about Israel or Jewish people, what would it be?
Yeah, so I would say the one big thing is that most Christians believe that Jews are uh, basically their authority or their what they rely upon is the Bible, is the Old Testament. In other words, so that they are the people of the book. But the reality is that Judaism is not based on the Bible, but it's based on later writings called the Talmud, which were developed in like the fifth, sixth, and seventh centuries, and it flowed out of the Pharisees, which of course are mentioned in the New Testament. It flowed from there. Kind of the Pharisees had one particular strain of Jewish life that then became rabbinic Judaism or the Judaism that we know of today. So most like most Christians will say, well, what how can you not believe in Jesus to a Jew? How can you not believe in Jesus? I mean, haven't you ever read Isaiah 53? The answer is no, they've never read Isaiah 53 because Jews don't read the Bible. And so they're not familiar with it. And first of all, even where the Bible is read, like in synagogues, they Isaiah 53 is never read ever, because because it's such an obvious messianic prophecy. So that's the big mistake is that Christians just think that Jews are people of the Old Testament, and sure, their heritage comes from that, but the belief system, nah, no way.
So they filter their reading of the Bible through the Talmud. So they don't read directly the Bible. They filter.
No, no, no Jews directly read the Bible. I mean, most Jew unless you're like a rabbi, you know, um, then and even I would say even religious Jews, so religious Jews, they'll have a siddur, like what's called a prayer book, that they use every day, 3 times a day. So they use that, and then they'll have like books about how to be a good Jew, how to live a Jewish life, things like that. But as far as reading the Bible, no, doesn't happen.
So is this a challenge when you will evangelize a Jew? Like you want to quote the scriptures to say, oh, you see the Old Testament saying that, Isaiah 53 saying this, but they don't know what is written in the Old Testament. So is this a challenge when you are evangelizing a Jew?
Yeah, there's no question. It is a challenge. I mean, of course, we use Isaiah 53 and other messianic prophecies to show who Jesus really is. But you have to understand that again, they're coming from a place of just not knowing anything. I mean, I can give you an interesting example. We, as I said, I was leading a congregation in Virginia, we have a community Passover Seder every year. And towards the end of the Seder, like, the time for the Lord's Supper, I would always read Isaiah 53 just directly. And because we'd have Jewish people coming as well. That was our goal, of course. And I'd always ask the question, I'd tell them, this was written 700 years before Jesus and everything else. I said, so after I read it, I said, who do you think he's talking about? So on one occasion, after one of the Passover Seders, this Jewish lawyer was there, and he said, I need to talk to you. Can we talk somewhere privately? And I said, sure. And so we went up into the sanctuary, and he said, when you read that passage, he said, it was as clear as night and day. He said, how can people not believe this? And so then he gave his life to the Lord, and stuff. So that was, unique and cool. But that's not going to be the norm. And a lot of times for people reaching out to Jews is that you have to meet them where they are. You have to understand Jewish people, the Jewish history, what they've experienced, and then through our testimonies, through our life, show a different life to cause them to want to know about this Jesus that we believe. That's the most effective way, always.